Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by Jerry Ostroski. Played 8 seasons with the Bills, a starter in most of them. He was a standout at the University of Tulsa, All-American 1991 on their All-Century team. His Bills career is very interesting to me in that it covers a span of being with players from a certain era and bridging it to a new one, and we can't wait to get into a lot of that with them. And Jerry, thanks for joining. And where are you calling from?
I'm actually down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I've been here ever since I left high school. Grew up outside of Philadelphia, actually, about 40 minutes northwest. Not very far from where Andre Reed grew up by, I was from Pottstown. He was obviously from Allentown. But, yeah, I've been down here since then, since 1988. We love it down here. Got a wife, 4 kids. The oldest one's a coach at Drake University in Iowa. The next one plays defensive end at Tulsa, and then the other 2 are twins that are here at the house for a while. So we're doing all right.
Excellent. You mentioned Andre Reed. Side story, you just made me think of it. My daughter played lacrosse at Edinburgh, Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference, and she played at Kutztown. And I went. They played, I think it was Kutztown and Westchester on a Friday and Saturday. Yep. And I went there. And then we were going to stay at a hotel. But before I left to go to the hotel, I'm like, there has to be something on this campus that commemorates Andre Reed. So I just was looking for someone to tell me where it was. So the baseball team was practicing, and they were coming off the field. And I just asked one guy randomly. I said, "Hey, how you doing? I wonder if you could help me. I'm looking for, is there anything on campus that shows, Andre Reed?" And he goes, "Are you from Buffalo?" And I was wearing a Bills polo. I go, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I am." He goes, "Oh, my roommate's dad played for the Bills, Mark Kelso."
Oh, wow.
What are the odds?
How funny.
Just the one guy I picked out. It was Mark
Wow,
Kelso,
that's wild.
son's roommate. Yeah, and there really was something there. It was quite a tribute in the main
Is
lobby.
there anything at the University of Tulsa for you, Jerry?
Actually, there is.
Actually,
there is. When I retired, not too long after that, I was entered into the University of Tulsa Athletic Hall of Fame. And then, I'd say about 5-6 years ago, I had the honor of getting my number 55 retired at the University of Tulsa. And then what's funny is my son always makes a joke. He comes out of the locker room, and that big wall right outside the locker room, there's where all the retired jersey deals are. So every day he walks out of the locker room, and there's this 10-foot, 8-foot tall picture of me with everything. So he's like, "Yeah, Dad, I can't get away from you, man."
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So we're gonna kind of go back to the beginning for you here, Jerry, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Can you talk about playing football in Oklahoma in high school and in college, and maybe when you knew that it's something that could lead to a career?
Well, it's funny. Back in Pennsylvania, I played for a high school team that was kind of legendary. Back in that region, Owen J. Roberts. 3 years of high school, we only lost 2 games, and to be honest with you, I don't know. Do you guys remember Dan Crossman?
Yes.
Yeah, special teams.
Danny Crossman and I went to the same high school. We were right. Danny was a senior when I was a freshman. Awesome. So Danny and I are from the same high school, from the same town. So, and then there's also the Babbage connection with Tulsa. Bobby and Bobby Jr. Bob played at TU. And his sister-in-law and all them are from down here in Tulsa. So there's a connection there as well. But anyway, playing in Tulsa, we lost 2 games in high school. We were kind of like, we're real good. And but we were one of those program teams. We didn't have a ton of guys go to big Division I universities. My senior year, another one of my teammates, Rudy Glocker, he went to Penn State. They offered me a walk-on spot. They had one of these, Joe had a 10 invite walk-on thing or whatever. And I was like, that's the only place I ever wanted to play. But I was like, I don't know how I could turn down scholarships from places like Tulsa, Temple, Delaware, some other places. Ended up falling in love with Tulsa, came out here, and the rest is history. So, I started pretty much right away as a freshman. I played a little bit as a true freshman. Then the next year I started at offensive tackle as a sophomore at TU, and then played my entire time out, didn't miss a game, and played all the way straight through. So I guess my senior year, scouts started coming around, started asking questions, different things. And, that's kind of how things went from there. But really back then, to me, there wasn't all this podcasting and social media and all these different things. It was really I was just loved to play football, and I loved to hang out with my buddies. And it was a good time. And I just happened to get school paid for and free food and a place to live, and it was kind of all worked out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, being first team All-American, that should have gotten the attention of for someone, which leads to the next question. We always love to ask players what they remember. This is very appropriate this week, of course, your draft day. So,
right.
Please tell us, leading up to draft day and on draft day, how did it all play out?
Draft day was pretty miserable for me, to be honest with you. I was not drafted high. I was drafted in the 10th round. I was always a big person. I was always big. I was always, I had natural strength. I played well. Sometimes my numbers maybe weren't as good as they wanted them to be. And for whatever reason, I just never popped on, as far as going to the combine. It wasn't, we didn't have all this testing, or I'm sorry, not testing, but specialized training where you went away for 3 or 4 months and did all that. And I guess my numbers weren't the greatest, but I was really productive and played well. And I, tell a story about that and kind of move on. So I got drafted by the Chiefs in the 10th round. Chiefs were loaded then. They had Grunhard at center, Zod at guard, John Alt. I mean, the team. I mean, they had some tremendous offensive linemen. And so they picked 3 linemen, one in the 8th, one in the 9th, one in the 10th. The guy they picked in the 8th was a guy named John Jennings from San Diego State. 9th, they picked a guy named Jay Leuenberg, who played center at Colorado, was also a first-team All-American with me, and then myself. They released Jay and they released me. They kept John. John was on the practice squad for 1 year and never played football again. Jay Leuenberg and I played a combined 18 or 19 years of NFL football.
Wow.
So that's kind of the interesting story of all of it. It's just draft day is still not an exact science, but it was really different then than it is now. I mean, it's so complex now. It's amazing. Well,
I'm sure you had a chip on your shoulder from that, and it probably helped drive you in some intangible way. I had kind of an interesting playoff late season this past year when everyone kept thinking Brock Purdy must have been related to me, and he was of course, we all know, the last pick.
I never thought of that.
Right? Yeah, I mean, so every team passed on him every pick except.
How long on draft day, Jerry? How long was it? Was 2 days then? Were you 10th round? Like what time was it when you finally got drafted?
It was 5 o'clock on Sunday.
Oh, that's a long.
Kind of like the start of a Billy Joel song. It was 5 o'clock on a Sunday.
So when you got the call, we had Mike Lodish on last fall,
right?
And I remember him saying, "Was he 11th round?" And who called him? Coach Levy called him, and he's like, "What the fuck took you so long to call?" What was your reaction when, when somebody finally called? Were you happy? Were you pissed?
That's such a Mike Lodish comment. I mean, that's so funny. No, man, I just was thankful to be drafted. And what's crazy, it just was so – my whole career was wild, okay? My whole career and making it and doing all these things was nuts. I mean, I ended up playing in Buffalo. I made a quick stop in Atlanta before they released me, and I ended up going to Buffalo after that. But, yeah, it was just happy to be picked. My college roommate, he was a tight end. He was 6'8", about 265. He was a combo guy, played basketball and football. He was a tight end. He just went out. Our quarterback, TJ Rubley, who you might remember, he played for the Rams and played for the Packers a little bit. He used to have Fallon catch for him when scouts came. Cowboys took him in the 6th round. He never worked out for him. He just was out catching balls for TJ one day, and they ended up drafting him. So it's wild how it happened, but it was just grateful. And I mean, it was what it was.
So how did when Kansas City let you go? How'd you get to Buffalo?
Man, wild story. So I go back to Tulsa, and I'm a student assistant coach at Tulsa, finishing up my degree. And then as soon as the season was over, boom, my phone started blowing up. And one of the teams that was wanting me to come was Buffalo. And my agent and I did the whole thing where we looked at the numbers. There was the Giants, the Falcons, the Bills, the Jaguars, and I believe somebody else. And we're sitting there, and that's what we narrowed it down to. We're looking at the numbers, and we're like, okay, Atlanta doesn't have, they got huge openings in O-line. We think that's where we should go, everything else. So little beknownst to me that me and the run and shoot offense are like about the complete opposite you could possibly get, right?
I can see that.
The only thing that came really, really good out of Atlanta, and I'm going to be 100% honest with you, one of my best friends that I met up here at Tulsa, a guy named Tom Hirsch, who went to law school here at TU, he said, you signing with Atlanta? I was like, yeah. He goes, well, that's awesome. He goes, I took a job hauling sheetrock for my buddy in Atlanta as well. He goes, I'm subletting my buddy Jeff Smart's apartment in Buckhead. He goes, so I'll be down there. I had a really good time in Atlanta for,
there you go.
for about 6-7 months. And this was the height of it with Buckhead and that whole 9 yards, and which kind of was awesome. So because that year when I ended up going back to Buffalo, our Super Bowl was in Atlanta, so I kind of already had a pre knowledge of the town. But no, I
succeed, or talking about seceding from the rest of Atlanta. Or
something. Yeah, it's who knows.
I don't know.
I still got buddies that live there, and I'll go check it out. But no, I ended up going to Atlanta. They cut me. I came back to Tulsa, so I'm working as a coach again. I'm breaking down film. And my offensive line coach, Mark Thomas, who coached me in college, he comes in. He says, "Hey," he says, "Dwight's here. He wants to see you." I said, "Oh boy, here we go." When I say Dwight, I'm talking about Dwight Adams.
Right.
And Dwight and I had a really good relationship. Dwight was from Little Rock, Arkansas, right? Mm-hmm. And Dwight and I had a really good relationship. Dwight would come through Tulsa all the time. So I went in. I walk in, and he just looks at me and goes, "I told you, dumbass, to go to Buffalo." And I started laughing. I was like, I know. And he said, "Hey," he says, just all kidding aside, he goes, "I think we're going to have a practice squad spot open in 2 weeks." He says, "I want you to have it if it opens." He goes, "But it's something that's got to open." I said, "Okay, well, just let me know." So he had my numbers and everything. So I went to Utah for a week to go visit my now wife, who was working for her sorority as a chapter consultant. So I'm up in Utah. I'm up in I think Deer Valley or something was where we were staying. And my phone rings, and it's that same guy, Tom, that was in Atlanta, who's going to law school. He goes, "Hey," he goes, "I just talked to the Bills. I got the contract worked out. Everything's fine. You're traveling." Like, "What are you talking about, Tom?" I said, so anyway, they called. He relayed the message to me. So I flew home on a Saturday. I packed on Sunday. I flew to Buffalo on Monday. I took a physical Tuesday morning, worked out Tuesday afternoon, signed my contract Wednesday morning, and was there for 10 years after that.
Was that 93?
Yes, it was halfway through the season, 6 games left of the year. They went and played in Atlanta for the Super Bowl.
Got it. Makes sense. So 94, you obviously were still on the team, and you found your way on the field, from that point forward.
Right. It was funny. So they kept me, and I had a hell of a preseason. I mean, I was killing it. And I'm sitting there. It's the last, when you get cut 3 times, man, or you get cut 2 times, you're running a little bit scared. Like, you know how it is. You guys have been in the building. You know how it works, right? Guys are trying to avoid you.
Oh, yeah.
You're over there. So we're staying at the old hotel over there by the mall, the Walden Galleria over there, whatever it is, the hotel they stay at. And I'm just sitting there all day long staring at the ceiling, right? It's like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. I'm like, damn, it's 5 o'clock. I haven't got a phone call yet. 5:15, the phone rings. I'm like, damn. So I pick it up, and it was John Butler.
Yeah.
He says, "Hey," he says, "come in and talk to me and Dwight and Marv. We need to talk to you." It's like, "Man, if you got to cut me, just cut me on the phone." He goes, "Just get your ass in here. We want to talk to you." So I went in, and it was hilarious. Like, I walked in their office, and it was John's. You remember where John's office was, right?
Oh, yeah.
So Dwight, Marv, and John are in there smoking cigars.
The power trio.
And so from the floor to about 6 foot is clear air. The rest of the way to the ceiling is a fog. And basically they're like, "Look, we're gonna release you. And the only reason we're releasing you is because if we release this other person, we think he's gonna get picked up. We think we can sneak you through waivers. You're here, but we want to, so they released me. They gave me more money on the practice squad. And, until there was, I think, 4 games left in the season, which they made sure was a strategic move, so I wouldn't get credit for a free agent season. But they brought me on for that Sunday night game in Miami on ESPN.
Oh, yeah.
The game that we go down there, and so early in the game, John Davis is having stinger problems, and he goes down. So Mike Devlin goes in because I got activated that week, and I'm on the sidelines with a ball cap on. I'm enjoying myself. I figure I'm just going to kick it, watch the game, And then halfway through the second quarter, the left tackle or the left guard was the right guard. No, John was playing right guard, so Mike went into right guard. The left guard was struggling a little bit, gave up a second sack of the game, and Bresnahan turns to me after the series and goes, "You're in next series," and I'm like doing one of those deals, and he was talking about me, and I ended up going in that's halfway through that second quarter and played until I broke my leg in 02.
Do you feel like it might have been easier to not have that anticipation, just to be thrown in there? Like you didn't have the nerves, whatever else. Like you feel like that was easier?
There was two things that made it really, really okay. One was that you didn't have time to think about it. It was get out there. And the other deal was 67 was on my right. And he was, he's like he's like your favorite stuffed animal, man. Like, Kent took care of you. And I just remember after the game, Mike Devlin and I got a game ball. The next morning we're on 103.3 with Shred and Ray again. I was like, this is like a dream, man. So, but it was awesome.
Do you think, could you tell people, we have kind of a smart audience that really gets into, the X's and O's of football.
Right.
Could you maybe tell people, like, what did Kent Hull do for you as a rookie? Like, what exactly, was he able to provide? Whereas if you just had a normal center or rookie center or whatever, like, what was it that he did for you?
And before you answer, I'm glad you asked that, Josh, because we have had more comments about Kent Hull, and it's a beautiful thing because his son Drew has been following our podcast,
right? And
just organically, and Josh reached out to him, and he came on the program, and he told a lot of stories about Kent, but he gets just as much from hearing stories from people like you that played with him. And here we go. This is another episode that we're going to have to make sure that he sees. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, we're not best friends by no means, but I make it a point whenever I can to make sure Drew understands what his father meant to me or who somebody else, or, hey, check your dad out here. I remember I was showing him the other day, or it wasn't the other day, it was a couple months ago, but when we played the Dolphins in the playoff game at home and Tim Tyndale runs the touchdown, we used to bust Timmy's balls constantly because he was so short, right? Well, if you watch the end of that celebration, I said to Dresser, watch your dad here. He goes out and then he drops down on his knees and gives Timmy a high five on his knee. It's hilarious. But yeah, I mean, and to go back to your original question, what Kent made there's one thing of making a call, okay, and telling you where to go. There's another of kind of giving you the nuances of how to get there and how to execute said call. And he would give you pointers on positioning. Like, hey, I know I've called, we used to make a call Redskin left or Redskin left and right, Giants, all that. So we made a Viking right, if you make a Viking left call, which is slide, it's a call for a slide protection. And you've got a guy that's on the inside shoulder, like teaching, like, hey, you're looking in that outside gap, but you don't have to move your body here. Keep your hand in the inside half here so you're looking outside. And then if somebody comes, you can leave. But if you stay here, you secure this for me. And just how to make those calls, or not only making the calls, but how to execute them to help everybody. And, he's so experienced. I mean, he played college, USFL, the NFL. I can remember a million times Jim Kelly coming up to the line of scrimmage, making a call. And there's going to be some pictures where you see Kent kind of turns and he's on one knee and he's turning, looking behind him. He's telling Jim basically, you're crazy. Don't run that ball. Don't make that play. Because by the numbers and where guys are lined up. So, no, it's just, it was a tremendous calming component to everything because he never got riled up. He never got excited.
I love hearing that.
So that was kind of the biggest thing. He was very, very calming.
That makes sense. We had Daryl Talley on, and he kind of admitted that even in practices got heated, as I'm sure you can attest to.
Right.
At times it was a competitive team, but that was just one guy he never wanted to mix it up with. He called him a mountain of a man or something. He just had so much respect for him.
I mean, look at his nickname. His nickname was Tough. I mean, Kent was that guy. He was a very calming force just by walking in the room. And again, another integral piece of that whole 4 Super Bowl run and how they all meshed together, how special that group was.
Right.
So Jerry, obviously in your career, you different positions on the line, you ended up becoming the starting center. Do you attribute some of that to Kent? Like what did you take from how his calls, the way that he conducted himself? How much?
I would say of all the positions I played, that was probably my definite least favorite, and probably not the one that I excelled at as naturally as some others. Obviously, I think if I was a couple inches taller, I'd have stayed at right tackle and never left. That was probably my best position. But no, I tried. I was a different personality than Ken. I was kind of a tweaker guy. I was kind of a guy that was riled up all the time and all that. So it was a different demeanor than what he was. But yeah, I tried. There was definitely things I tried to do, and tried to emulate, and the biggest thing is probably trying to bring young guys along. It's a very, very weird thing in the NFL when you're playing a position that somebody else has been brought in to compete with you and maybe eventually take your job, and their coaching staff organization is then looking at you as a veteran to help this guy come along. And so what's the fine line? I remember, Kent told us a story one time that Joe Devlin had a little book on every player that he played against, and he took intricate notes on every pass rusher he played against. And he would, guys would come in, and the dudes that didn't know Joe would go, "Hey, what do you got on Lawrence Taylor?" And he would basically tell them to go F themselves because, no, I'm not giving this to you because you might leave here and go play with him, and then you'll tell him what I have on him.
Right. And
so, it's definitely a weird thing. But the things I tried to do was to help the younger guys and bring the younger guys along, like Kent would.
Interesting. When we talk about practice, when we talk about, guys who you played against, can you talk to me about how ridiculously unblockable Ted Washington and Pat Williams were? Like I was there for a number of the practices, and Ted was just like a mountain of a man. Just ridiculously strong. And Pat Williams always struck me as somebody who was really underrated and was a difference maker on the defensive line. Like, did you feel like going against them every single day, made you better? And obviously there's Bruce Smith and there's Phil Hansen and all those guys, but we talk about them quite a bit. And I know you went, toe to toe with Ted and Pat every day. So can you just talk about them a little bit? Well,
I think first of all, I don't think people understand kind of the, we were physical, but we weren't that physical in practice. I don't know if you remember Bruce's deal. Like, if you touched Bruce, Bruce lost his damn mind, right? So there were some different things. The thing about Ted and Pat that nobody wants to give them credit for, the largest athletic men I've ever been around. Ted could play possum better than anybody. You would look at Ted and you think, oh, he's just this big old dude. And in 2 seconds, he's gone. And just tremendous amounts of natural strength. And it's the same thing with Pat Williams. Pat didn't get his respect until he left Buffalo and went to Minnesota and had that run in Minnesota. And people then really were like, wow, he really was, he really was a good player. If you remember, I think Pat was an undrafted free agent. If he wasn't, he was a way, way low round draft choice.
I think he was undrafted free agent.
Yeah. So just tremendously athletic, naturally strong and gifted, just huge men. I actually played against Ted Washington in college. Ted was at Louisville when I was at Tulsa. And I told Ted, I said, hey, man, the first time I met Ted, I said, what's up, Ted? He goes, hey. And he's just kind of looking at me. And he put 2 and 2 together because we used to have wars because we would try to, Ted was the man. We're trying to win, and we'd go after Ted. And boy, he hated us. And he's looking at me corner of his eye. I'm like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah.
So he was a little bit standoffish the first time we met, but no, seriously, just tremendously athletic, strong. Just gifted, really, really good football players.
Yeah, your career, Pat, is so interesting. In the years that you played with the Bills, you played with a lot of the guys that were in the Super Bowls.
Right.
Then you were on playoff teams with a lot of those guys. Then it transitioned. Right. A couple games I want to ask you about. The the Pittsburgh playoff game, 95 season, 96. Bruce gets the flu. What do you remember about that? Like, do you think he still might show up? What were you told as just, as someone on the team about it?
I was still a little bit young, and honest to goodness, I mean, while I was bluesing that Bruce wasn't playing.
Yeah,
I was more nerved up about Avoid the Lloyd. I was more worked up by Greg Lloyd,
right?
Brown,
Kevin
Green, Green.
Sure.
I mean, that's what I was more worried about. I mean, the thing I remember about that game more than anything, and we had a chance to win. That was about the time when I guess we were short on offensive weapons, and they started implementing Tasker more and more into the offensive game plan. If you remember, they had that. This is before the craze of the fly sweep. They had that inside receiver handoff to Tasker, and he was running and had really good success on it. But I remember that was kind of the time when Steve kind of got pushed to the forefront as like that almost I wouldn't say second receiver, but definitely third receiver.
Yeah.
In our offense, and was really, really good at it.
Andre had been hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
He took like that Isaiah McKenzie role from like the last couple of years, the jet sweeps and the motions and all. And we had him on the show, and he said that Jim Kelly was his biggest advocate for years. And he felt sometimes that Jim would force the ball to him just so that he could say, "Hey, I was right about Steve." Like I told you, I told you this guy could play.
I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, right. So another game, talking about interesting games and all. The 98 playoff game down in Miami, the game where Eric Moulds had 240 yards receiving.
Yeah,
that felt like another like real winnable game, and one of those games where you guys 98, 99, the whole thing was just get in, the defense can carry the team. I felt like that was another real tough loss. What do you remember from that game?
I watched a little bit of it not too long ago. It's well, first of all, anytime you play in Miami in the end of December or January, it sucks because it's you're leaving 0-degree weather and you're going down to that place, so it's hot and humid. Jimmy Johnson kind of starting his reign in Miami and all that, but no, it was weird. Like we just could never get over the hump. I just remember we were making plays. Eric was playing out of his mind, and we were scoring points. We just couldn't seem to make the big play on offense. We couldn't just make that one play. Then, of course, we're going down. I had the opportunity to score, don't get in and everything. But, yeah, that was incredibly disappointing.
Yeah, that play, I think it was Trace Armstrong sacked Flutie, and, it was first or third and goal, whatever, time ran out. But they have a giant picture of that play up in their press box in the coach's booth. Yeah. The other thing too, going back, you mentioned before you didn't think you were a great fit for the run and shoot. I'm sure you could have adjusted, but what kind of change of pace was it like blocking for Doug Flutie?
Well, Flutie was interesting because when you play with a quarterback like Doug that's so mobile and elusive and can make plays and ad-lib so well, you stayed on your block, but the crowd kind of gave you the clue of what was happening because everything's going on behind you. So when you hear the crowd start going, here he goes, right? And so, yeah, I mean, it was a guy like Flutie makes that offensive line look really, really good because he's very elusive and he's able to make people miss and all those things.
Yeah.
But am I in that picture in Miami? That makes me sad.
Oh, I didn't look specifically for you, but I got a good feeling there's at least part of you. If you were in on that play, it shows the whole offensive line, and it's right where the coach's booth is. I ended up a couple of years. They asked me to take pictures up there and you just it
I believe it was a slide protection. I believe.
Sorry, I didn't mean to press you on that.
Oh no, I hated Trace. I hated Trace Armstrong, and if I ever saw Trace Armstrong, I'd tell him this because he was at the end of his career. So all he did was play like 8 plays a game, and all he did was rush me for 8 plays. So the only thing he did the whole week was watch film of me. He didn't have to worry about nothing else, and that's basically all he did. He was just strictly a pass rush guy.
Yeah.
Wow, and that's tough. You've played the whole game. It's 80 degrees down there, and this guy's coming in fresh as a daisy.
Oh yeah, 8 times. Fresh as a daisy. He's watched every tendency I have, so there's nothing I can do to throw him off because he's seen it all week long. So, no, it's just the way it goes. So yeah. I don't have much love for Trace Armstrong.
That's funny. A couple more here for you, Jerry, before we let you go. We have to talk about Carl Mock. I've told a story on the show about when I got promoted to the football department, and Carl came into Max Bowman's office and unceremoniously told me that I was lower than whale shit on the whiteboard, and then proceeded to not speak to me for like 5 months, crossing me in the hall, whatever else. Can you just give us maybe one funny Carl story and maybe just like your overall impressions of playing for him, and because people responded to that story, and I'm sure there's 100 more.
Well, there's a lot of Carl stories where there's a few times I wanted to kick his ass.
Yeah, I remember. I remember you and him going at it a few times.
Yeah, Washington was a really special game for me because Wade made me the captain that week, and just out of luck, it was National Defense Day, and I got to meet the Secretary of Defense, Casper Weinberger, at the 50-yard line, and they flipped a commemorative coin, and they gave the captains a coin. I still have it.
Very cool.
So that was really cool. And then we had an altercation on the sideline, and Carl and I got into it. Ruben saved Carl that day. He broke it up. But no, Carl was awesome as far as Carl was very much a player's coach. That's why he treated you the way he treated you. The story to go along with that, Carl used to have 2 terms, okay? There are temps and there are perms.
Perms, yep.
Temps and perms. Yep. You were considered now a perm.
Yep. Yes,
because you were kind of a morph between administration and the football staff. So, funny. So he used to say it all the time when he'd get pissed, and he'd be like, them damn perms upstairs, they'll be here forever. I'll be dead and they'll still be working here.
Yep. I remember I knew I was in with Carl when the first preseason game I went to the chapel service. Right. And I remember there was like maybe 7 or 8 of us in there. And afterwards he grabs me by the back of the neck and he just kind of looks at me. He's like, all right, kid. That's all. And that was the first words he had spoken to me in like 5 months. And I knew at that point I was in with him as much as I could be. And then he'd give me the grunt hello from then on in. Right. He terrified me. I mean, I'll be honest with you. He absolutely terrified me.
Well, and I'm sure you heard the other saying you had all the time was, they're going to get rid of me. I got 90 acres in Southern Illinois. I'm going to go live on. But he's the, what's my man's name on Ted Lasso? Kent? Roy Kent.
Roy Kent.
He was the original Roy Kent.
Oh, very good.
Hey, Carl.
True.
He was the original Roy Kent. But the thing about Carl was he was fair to you. He had played. He understood a lot of stuff. He was a tough guy, and he loved football. I mean, he loved the game of football. And his wife Vicky was the sweetest woman of all time. She was really, really beautiful.
He's nice. Oilers. He blocked for Earl Campbell.
Right.
Yeah, he played for Earl.
He played for Wade. He played for Wade's dad.
That's right.
Yeah, he played for Wade's dad.
Yeah.
And Carl had a very similar kind of route to playing that I had. He kind of willed himself to play, and he was a tough guy that could get after it, and that's how he ended up making it.
Do you have any memories or funny stories about any of your teammates? Anybody on those teams that you could share?
I have a lot. None that I will care to share.
Yeah, fair.
I don't know. The name of your podcast is "If These Walls Could Talk." I'm glad that they don't talk.
I understand. We try to keep things a little vague and just give people kind of a little bit of an inside information.
I've really had the opportunity and the pleasure of getting to kind of reconnect with some of the guys that I had played with. Since as you guys know, I mean, it's kind of led you to this podcast. Since COVID happened, there's been a lot of connection through Zoom, connection through vidcasting and all that. Really had the opportunity to kind of rekindle my friendship with John Fina and talk to Fina quite a bit. and wonderful guy. We're kind of similar in a way where he's got kids that are playing major college football. I do as well, plus one coaching, and we kind of can bounce things off one another and talk about how miserable we feel and we need a knee replacement and all those things. Glenn Parker a little bit, talked to him, a few others, but we were talking the other day. I will say this. So we had and this was a tradition that Rusty Jones, and you were asking earlier about, making it was one of those deciding factors. If you remember, Rusty was really good at taking reclamation projects and getting them fit and getting them prepared to play. He did it with House Ballard. He tried to do it with Jerry Crafts. I kind of fell in that category of, guinea pig project guy when I was on the practice squad, all the different treadmill running and running in the pool and all that stuff. But Fridays were always a big thing for us because we used to get pizza and wings from Lenovo, right? Mm-hmm. So we'd get pizza and wings from Lenovo, and usually somebody ended up going to the 7-Eleven over on the corner, and there might be a 6-pack or case of beer show up, especially when the new building was built, because they had a 40-degree cold plunge in it, so it was a real convenient place to put your 6-pack. But he sent me a text the other day. He goes, I could use some pizza and wings from Lenovo, and I just remember we get regular pizzas, but we get these sheet pizzas from Lenovo, and they're huge. And we're playing the New York Jets every week, right? Or not every week, but we're playing. You'd open up that sheet pizza and spinach right in the middle of the pizza and say F, but not F. the Jets.
Awesome.
On the pizza. So, so that was man, those barbecue buffalo wings on the grill that they have. Oh, some of it's the best ever.
I've told Don, you and John are real active on Twitter, and and I find it's cool for people, my age, guys growing up for the team, like Daryl Talley's, real interactive on Twitter, Cornelius Bennett. It's kind of neat that social media has allowed people to interact with, NFL athletes, right. the guys now, but more importantly for like people our age, like guys like you, guys who played. I think it's just kind of neat that there's an interaction between people who you grew up admiring and watching, right. And you guys are just people, and that's what I've always told people when I worked there. It struck me as a kid, you guys seem larger than life and superhuman. But then when I met, when I'm there and you meet them, they're just human beings. They're just people like you and I. Especially as you get older, it's like we're just two dudes just hanging out.
To kind of solidify that, I had kind of my surreal moment this season. My boys had never been back to Buffalo for a football game. So my boy that coaches at Drake, his girlfriend was like, she came to me around earlier in the season. She says, I want to take Jackson to Buffalo for his birthday for a game. And I said, well, hell, let's just all go back. So myself, my two oldest boys, and my oldest son's girlfriend, we went back to Buffalo for that Sunday night, or the flex game. It was actually Saturday night, the where it snowed against Miami.
Yep.
Yeah. Never experienced a Buffalo Bills game as just a guy that walks in and nobody knows who the hell I am. Nobody knows what, and so we took the whole thing in, and we had been talking to his name escapes me, the guy who just went down to Carolina to do the
Jeremy Kelly.
Yeah, Jeremy Kelly. So talked about coming in, I'm like, and I said to my boys, I said, do you want to go sit inside? I said, I heard it's kind of a little area, maybe some obstructive views. And they go, we didn't come all the way to Buffalo to sit inside, Dad. Like,
Good for them.
We're sitting with the Mafia.
Good for them.
So we got the whole thing in. We were at the Mafia house. We did the whole 9 yards, tailgating. Absolutely wonderful experience. I'll never forget it. It's to the fact where we're going to come back, I'm sure, every year. We'd gone to Kansas City, and Fina met me in Kansas City. We went up there and watched the Chiefs-Bills game up there, but it just didn't compare to going to Buffalo, especially with my kids.
Did anybody wear a 60 jersey?
No, nobody wore a 60 jersey. We had some good stuff on. Jackson actually has a Flutie jersey that he wore.
Okay.
But I do have their picture, both of those goons. I have a really, really good friend that we had access to the field after the game, and both of them wanted to take shirtless pictures on the field. So my son's in coveralls or overalls, no shirt on, standing in front of the scoreboard that says playoff bound.
That's beautiful.
So it's beautiful.
It started snowing in the fourth quarter of that game too. So it was still snowing at that point.
And then we got the video. My one boy has the video of the first score we had. Everybody scooping the snow in the seats and throwing it in the air. It looked like a giant snow globe. It was classic.
Did anybody recognize you?
A few did. A few did. Some did, some didn't. But it was cool. I did sign autographs and take some pictures, and there were some people there that knew I was coming. Friends of mine that I met on Twitter that I've become friends with. So, but it was awesome. I actually got to see Cornelius. I got to see Biscuit earlier this season. His son played for Arkansas State, and they played my son here in Tulsa. So he was actually at the game. I got to see him.
He looks so good. He takes a picture of himself every Sunday. In his best. He looks great.
Yeah. I'm so jealous, man. Yeah. I mean, he looks so good.
Yeah, he obviously goes to church or whatever he does on Sundays, and he posts a picture of himself, like 3-piece suit every Sunday.
He does it on LinkedIn too.
He looks amazing. Yep. Yeah. Like he looks like he could still play. There's a couple of those guys that look like they could still play, and then there's people who look old. So Jerry, before we let you go here, we're going to do something called the 2-minute warning, where we're going to ask you 10 quick questions, and just to get some fun off the wall answers. So Don, go ahead.
Okay. Where is your most interesting place to watch a Bills game for you these days?
Most interesting place to watch a Bills game. There's a Bills backers bar in town that I frequent here and there. So probably do that.
3 people, dead or alive, you'd want to have dinner with.
3 people, dead or alive. My grandfather that I never met. That's
3 in a row. Grandfather.
Yeah. 3 people that dead or alive. My grandfather I never met. I'd like to meet Tiger Woods.
Okay.
And I would like to also, who else would I like to have dinner with? Wow, you got me stumped.
Just for a spoiler, Reed Ferguson, who we just interviewed last night, he said his wife. So I thought that was a good answer.
No, I have dinner with my wife every night.
Fair enough.
No, I don't know who. Jesus, maybe. I'd like to meet Jesus.
There you go. Okay. There's your 3.
Woody said that.
Woody said Jesus.
Yeah, a few other people.
I'd like to meet Jesus.
Yeah, Luke Russert. Okay, you're entering an arena. You're a big deal. Dry ice entrance. What's your song?
What's my song? Probably Dreams and Nightmares from what's my guy's name? It's lost top of my head. It's the sound the Eagles used to play when they made their Super Bowl run. I have to make a confession. Growing up in Philadelphia, I still am an Eagles fan. So
it's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right. What's the best concert you've ever been to?
Oh, best concert I've been to is probably a tie. Probably Springsteen in Philadelphia at the Spectrum. Played 4 hours. Tunnel Love tour. Had a brass section with him called the Miami Horns. It was absolutely unbelievable. And recently, we were Tulsa, Oklahoma, our arena. We were the first show for the new Metallica tour. That Metallica concert was absolutely phenomenal.
I was there at Buffalo this summer for it. Last summer, it was incredible.
Yes.
Okay. Other than Lenova, what is your favorite Buffalo restaurant and dish that you get there?
We used to go after every game. Well, this is probably a tie. Now I don't even know if the place is still there. Is Daniel's still in business?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Daniel's is my high end place, and they used to do this venison tenderloin with a cherry sauce. It was awesome. And then my other place, if I go the other end of the spectrum, there used to be a joint down by the hotel called Otto's. It was an Italian restaurant.
Still there on Union. Yep.
Yes, and Otto's, you could go in there and get the veal parm, and it was like it would cover your face. It was so big, and we used to go there after games because we started taking people there, and that's where we went. So we'd have like anywhere from 5 to 55 people in autos after games. It was awesome.
I've driven by that place 100 times and never have been in.
I've been in there.
Now.
It's a dive, but it's got great food and a good atmosphere.
I'm doing it.
What was your favorite road city, Jerry?
I liked going up to New England when we played New England because, I think the original Capitol Grill was up there, and we used to eat there. So, just a little. You asked about stories about teammates. Fina and Parker were like the kings of cuisine, right? Still are. John is a great cook. Like John could probably open up a restaurant and be the chef. So those two used to scout everything out. So you never had to worry about it because Marv and Wade used to let you go out and eat on your own, and then his Williams showed up, and then you had to eat with the team and eat in the hotel and all that stuff. But yeah, so we could go up there and eat the Capitol Grill. That was a great one. Miami was good because of food. I'm trying to think where else. Baltimore, you got crab cakes. The only problem about Miami, and if you were on the plane and you remember this, Bruce and those dudes always got Joe's Crab Shack. They got Joe's Crabs on the way back, so the whole stinking plane smelled like garlic butter and freaking crab. And so you're already ready to puke because you're on the peak of dehydration from playing in that godforsaken place. And then you got to smell freaking crabs and garlic butter. And so that was kind of an issue sometimes.
That's amazing.
Your favorite cartoon growing up as a kid?
My favorite cartoon growing up was Hong Kong Phooey.
Nice. Oh, that's a first. I remember that one.
Hong Kong Phooey. That whole run of Hong Kong Phooey, Captain Caveman, Grape Ape, the Laugh Olympics. That was my wheelhouse.
That's awesome. What's the most annoying fan base in the NFL?
The most annoying fan base? Kansas City.
All right.
Kansas City. New money that acts like old money.
There you go. I like that. I like that a lot.
That's your second shot of Kansas City in this podcast. We get the message. I think I know the answer to this coming from Tulsa, but can you drive a stick shift?
Yes, I drove. I took my driving test in my dad's Ford truck, which was 3 on the tree, so I can do that as well. So yes, I can drive a stick shift.
All right, Jerry. I'm going to ask you this one, and I don't know whether you're going to want to answer it or not. Who should have started the playoff game, Doug or Rob?
What is the fascination with this? I gotta ask.
It is amazing. People still,
because they dug Rob up the other day, and somebody had a big.
I would have never. I've never asked it before. I haven't really thought about it all that much, but it's amazing how even 23 years later, it still resonates with people.
I think that was the last year we still had any of the stars that were left for the Super Bowl. That was clearly their swan song and the last best opportunity to advance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And around here, they didn't make the playoffs for 17 years after that. So there wasn't a lot of good football to reminisce about since then. So I guess that's probably why. So you can answer if you want.
Hot take.
What I will say is this, and this is the answer I give, and I respect everybody involved. Everybody has their own story. You know, Rob has his own story. Doug has his own story. Everybody has their story of what went down and how it happened and everything else. And I respect that. But I will say is this. Both of them were very, very good quarterbacks. And when we left the football field, we were winning.
Yep. There you go.
It's inarguable.
That's
when we left the field. And by the way, that was one of the most miserable places to play in. I never played in a louder place than that place that day. That was you want to talk about a setup game, kind of like when we went into Cincinnati this year. And then, of course, the unfortunate events that happened. But I just, you get that feeling when you walk on the field and there are 80,000 people honestly hate you.
Yeah.
And they want bad things to happen to you. That's how I felt in Tennessee that day. When we walked off the field, we were winning.
Yep. No, you're 1,000% right. That day, you're right. That was an angry crowd. That was a lubed up crowd, and they played like Shania Twain, and every timeout, obnoxious. I don't enjoy there either. Go ahead, Don.
Can you sing us 5 seconds of the Tulsa fight song?
No, I can't. I know how it goes.
That's okay.
Onward University. So yeah, I don't know the words very well.
There you go.
I should. I'm embarrassed.
No, that was better than our last.
Yeah. Can you tell everybody about your podcast and where they can find you before we go?
Yeah, we have a podcast. I do a podcast with Sarah Larson. She's actually in Miami, and some of you might know her from social media and stuff. She comes to all the Bills games. She's kind of started a streak like Pinto Ron. I think she's 30-some in a row now herself. But it's called Line to Gain. It's on the Buffalo Rumblings Network. We are on Thursday nights, 9 Eastern, 8 Central. We were off last week. I had an event I had to be at, an MC fundraising event. But this week we'll be on. We'll be talking about a couple things. Probably the main two things, the three things we'll probably be talking about are the most polarizing topics that have come in the offseason about the upcoming Buffalo Bills draft. The one is, if he's available, do you take Bijan Robertson? If he's not and Jack Campbell's available, do you take Jack Campbell? And then the other is are the Bills kidding themselves? Do they really need to make a concerted effort to get better at the tight end position? Those are probably the three things we'll dive into, maybe amongst some other stuff. I know that Sarah and some other people from the network are going up to the draft. I will be here at my house. I'm actually going to do an instant reaction pod or vidcast after the draft pick is made, and we'll talk about it. But yeah, it's a very, very interesting draft. I think the teams are really understanding now how difficult it's going to be to build dynasty-type teams when Jalen Hurts gets the money that he got, and Burrow then is going to get more than him, and when Allen comes back up, so it's just when 25% and maybe in the future even more of your salary cap is put to one position, the quarterback position, how do you manage the rest of the team? So it'll be interesting.
Good. You're gonna get a great audience. I mean, I tell you, it's at a fever pitch here with the draft. Josh and I were talking before this that we're kind of seeding the floor next week to draft talk because you guys are great at it.
Well, let me ask you this: like, where do you two guys think we're going to go?
I'm in camp never a running back in the first round. Just me personally. I just don't feel like the value's there.
As am I.
Okay.
But I have a very good friend that's the college football analyst for Fox Sports. He's the online guy, does content, and he is trying to sell me on Bijan and how different he is. So I don't know. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm with you in that.
I feel like it's kind of the same argument as like when Saquon Barkley came out, right? Like, I mean, he's a different. Right. He's special. He's amazing. But I feel like you can pick up somebody, in the 6th or 7th round that is just, a tier lower. But the cliff at linebacker is clearly bigger than the cliff at running back. You're right about tight end. If Michael Mayer or one of those guys drops, I feel like that might be somewhere where you can upgrade quickly too. I just want to see them. I want to see them have pick a difference maker for this year because the window's wide open.
Yeah, Campbell would be essentially replacing Edmonds, right?
Yeah. What would you do, Jerry?
I personally watching them and watching how they play and watching things. I believe our weakness on both sides of the football is up the middle. I would get bigger. We talked about Ted and Pat earlier.
Yep.
I would find Ted or Pat, or I would find somebody.
They're pretty old.
Be bigger. Yes, exactly. And I know where I could find them, but I would get bigger and more physical up the middle. I think there's a guy right now that's at TCU named Steve Avila that I really, really like. I think when Brown is healthy, he's a difference maker and kind of the attitude of the offensive line. I don't think he was healthy all last year, but we've got to get nastier. We got to get bigger up the middle on both sides of the ball. I don't mind Jack Campbell. I think Campbell is a Sean McDermott type player. Poor man's Luke Kuechly maybe. But no, I just think we got to get bigger. We got to get nastier. But if you look at our offensive linemen that we continue to sign and continue to bring in, they're all 6'5". They're all 305. There's like this robotic type player that we're getting right now. So they like longer, leaner type linemen. Maybe they can run the stretch a little bit outside zone. But to go back to Bijan Robinson real quick, and I know we're up against it. If you bring in a premier back like that, are you going to sacrifice 15 to 20 touches, taking the ball out of Josh Allen's hands?
Yeah.
To give to him?
Yeah.
This is what everybody has to understand. If you bring in a premier back, he needs the ball. If you give him the ball, it goes away from the darling, which, Josh is, everybody. I mean, I've never seen a dude that's untouchable like this guy. I mean, you can't criticize Josh Allen. He's he walks on water like Wyatt Earp and Tombstone. But it's, if you're giving Bijan the ball, you're taking the ball out of his hands, and are you willing to do that?
Jerry, you have given us by far the best draft take we've had on our podcast so far.
Yeah, absolutely,
by far.
Yeah, hopefully everybody
great.
tunes in to hear you. I know I'll check out your instant reaction. Once we make the pick. Now I'm even more curious after talking to you. Really appreciate your time today, Jerry. It's been great. It was a lot of fun.
And by the way, Jack Campbell hasn't been in for a top 30 visit, so.
Oh, there you go.
Anyway,
well, we're gonna both be perms in this podcast, right, Jerry?
Well, you since I'm the temp, you two perms enjoy yourself. Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. It was awesome. It's good seeing you again. You know how to get a hold of me. I'm sorry I'm a little bit of a pain sometimes scheduling wise, but I sell medical devices, so I'm at the mercy of my surgeons.
No, we're all good.
Today just happens to be a very slow day, so
we're all good. We'd love to have you come back sometime.
And John, too. Sounds good. Talk with him. We're working on getting him on. Too,
yeah, we want to have.
John and I at the same time is pretty good. We're pretty good comedy.
That would be that would be. I actually thought about that when you were mentioning him today because you and him are just such different personalities, but you mesh well together. So we'll definitely talk again, Jerry. Thank you.
All right, guys. We'll see you. Bye now.
Bye-bye.